Welcome everybody to a new episode of Data Talks. This is a really cool one. You'll enjoy it. I'm here with Yarden Horwitz, co-founder of Spate, an icon in the rising beauty tech industry, and somebody with a great background in data science, and the future, I would say. Welcome to the show, Yarden.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be part of this.
Well, same here. For the viewers that don't know, we have actually worked on a number of projects together, including on Gen Z, which we'll dive deep in a minute. Before that, I want to, Yarden, have the viewers understand a bit your own genesis and background and what drove you to co-found Spate, because you had a distinguished career at Google. And tell us about that part and how that shaped you, but also why did you leave Google for Spate?
Yeah, great questions. My career at Google was, it began as an analyst. So I was an analyst on the sales teams, helping them. The sales teams would, of course, pitch their clients to sell more media ads, and their clients wanted data on just like how to, launch ads. But I would come in and do a bit more of an analysis on what their consumer was thinking, how their consumer was thinking about their brand, how their brand was performing with the consumers based on consumer behavior, how consumers were searching or how they were interacting on YouTube. And in doing that, really realized that you can gather so much insight just from these data points. And so you can see, oh, actually, consumers are not aware of your brand, or consumers are aware of your brand, but they're thinking about you like XYZ, and maybe you don't want to position yourself like that. So maybe you should, change your positioning and create ads that target or position yourselves in a different way. And in doing that, this was early days in Google advertising and YouTube advertising. So people didn't quite even imagine that you could have that much control or that much of a storytelling nature in Google advertising. It was the beginning of all of that, of all online advertising, and people weren't as creative back then with it. And so we were blowing a lot of minds with that type of data. And we realized that there's so much insight you can gather from consumer behavior and search. And we, my co-founder and I, so Olivier and I, started looking at trends. So just looking at category data. We started in the fashion world, and we did our first Google fashion trends report. It was purely a little hobby of ours. We were doing it weekends, evenings, and we launched it in 2015. It got picked up by the New York Times. So it was the front cover of the business section, and it just blew up. Brands were reaching out. They wanted more of this data. They wanted to understand how they could get ahead of the next big trend. And so it became our full-time role. We started launching other reports like Beauty Trends Report. We did beverage, food, skincare, hair care, and we even got into auto trends. So seeing what automotive trends were taking off, we did a whole story on that. And every time we'd release one of these reports, we'd get so much demand for more data, and we realized how big the opportunity was. So we left in 2018 to pursue it a bit further. We got into Y Combinator. So we did Y Combinator in the summer of 2018. And that gave us like a little boot camp on how to run a startup. And then we came back to New York after that, and we were off to the races.
Congratulations. Wow. Tell us a bit about the, Y Combinator and Post story. Is it you're just growing, and then tell us about, the new phases of growth and how you run the operation, or tell us a bit about the early startup years and where you are now.
Yeah, of course. So Y Combinator is definitely such a whirlwind. It's an incredible experience. I highly recommend it to everyone. But if you can get in, it really is a boot camp. The focus is just to launch. Just launch. You should launch on day one. You should get things out ASAP. The faster you get things to the market, the faster you get things to consumers and clients, the better the feedback is, the faster you can iterate, and the faster you can get to a product that actually has market fit. And so we worked our butts off for a full summer. And, it obviously doesn't end then. We got funding from Demo Day at Y Combinator. So we got funding from Alexis Ohanian, Gary Tan, their fund called Initialize. Alexis Ohanian is co-founder of Reddit. Gary Tan is now, he runs Y Combinator actually. And so they've just been amazing investors, amazing advisors, really helped us push through at the beginning. We got in with L'Oreal, Estee Lauder from the beginning. We had great contacts through our network at during our Google days. And then also when we left, we got really in with a community called CW, so Cosmetic Executive Women. We did presentations with them on some trends in the beauty space. So state of the industry, we were presenting with Google on what trends were taking off. And what was so fascinating, at the end of the day, we were just saying what the data was telling us. And the data ended up hitting the mark every time. And I mean, I'm not surprised. I don't think you'd be surprised either, but data, tells the truth. And we were able to spot trends that nobody was talking about. And so these trends just kept proving themselves correct. And we were the ones talking about these new up and coming trends before anyone else. And that was able to get us more and more attention, more media credibility. And we were just able to appear in more places. And a lot of our traction is still completely inbound. We do a lot of organic marketing in a way. Like we don't really spend too much on marketing or advertising.
Wow, fascinating, and congrats again, Yarden. I hope the even younger, our founders out there find that as an inspiration. But it's always hard work, I guess. That's what is very few startups that don't entail hard work.
It's always hard work, and the work doesn't stop. You continue to iterate, and the market continues to move, and things continue to change, and you have to continue to keep up with everything.
You just mentioned, Yarden, that you were able to spot trends that others didn't see yet. Give us a few illustrations of some of those trends, maybe from various stages of Spate, including recent ones, which are some of the trends you'd like to showcase to the audience.
Yeah. So some of the trends, I'm trying to think of 2018. I know even in 2019, a trend that took off that we had mentioned in one of our presentations, and it just continues to grow, which is so fascinating, is press-on nails. And the whole concept of artificial nails has just we were the first to mention it in 2019. We did an article with Vogue Business then, and I'm sure we were talking about it even before that article came out. And press-on nails continue to grow strong. It's completely transformed a whole industry, and it has gained so much traction with consumers, and people go to Etsy, they go to Amazon to buy press-on nails, and new brands have stemmed out of it and seen a ton of success. And that was one area that I just saw recently is still trending. And, things like even freckle pens. Like, I think what's so fascinating is that the trends are moving so quickly, and there are so many trends. We've seen that with TikTok, and everyone, kind of laughs about trends, how fast-paced Gen Z is. But at the end of the day, the trends really do stick around. And a lot of these trends that we called out back in 2019 are still around stronger than ever today, and just continue to come in different iterations or different styles and remarketed in new ways. So it really shows that you can find these fast-paced trends and you have to act on them from a language perspective to keep up. But a lot of the times these trends are actually sticking around. And if you invest in them, they can really be meaningful for your business.
Interesting that you said that it wasn't actually where press-on nails. That's an interesting one, and you were the one that saw it. But also, as you say, that's a trend that's sustained, right? Because I imagine to separate the trend from the fad or the noise from the signal. And to give you an example, we had here actually, I don't know if you know this, crusty slices. It's really cool. It's like pizza with croissant mixed. And a long queue outside the restaurant, but now it's over. Now it seems to have been a fad. So how do you separate the fad from the trend?
Yeah, I mean, I think we definitely, so the whole thing about Spate is that we're quantifying the data so that you can easily track how it's growing and see if it's a rising star or a sustained riser is what we call it. And rising star trends are trends that are seeing really, really strong growth in a short amount of time. These are riskier, but a lot of sustained risers start off as rising stars. And so, for example, even something like turmeric, when we first spotted it, it was a rising star, but then it continued to grow and became sustained over time. So it, it tends to be a bit of a risky decision at the beginning. You don't know if it's here to stay or not. There are signals though. So one signal is how people are searching for things, how people are engaging with the trend. Often when they just learn about a trend, they'll ask something like, what is press-on nails? I mean, they know what press-on nails are, but let's say, what is turmeric? So that's how it starts. It's always turmeric or what is turmeric? And that's how you know the consumer is still in the education phase. Once consumer starts to say benefits of turmeric, they're still engaging, they're researching, they're interested. Then they start to associate real benefits. So they'll do turmeric and acne, turmeric and heartburn, turmeric and teeth whitening, like things like that. Consumers will search for anything and everything. And that's kind of when you know that you've hit something interesting, because the second consumers start taking a trend and associating it with multiple types of benefits, multiple type of formats, that's when you've like identified something that has legs and is here to stay.
Super cool, Yarden. As you just highlighted, I think a lot from people can relate to the Google search. And if I understand correctly, you combine Google search, Facebook, TikTok, maybe other sources. Tell the viewers a bit, at a high level, how the machine works.
Yeah, great question. So we obviously started off with Google, especially when we were at Google. We were looking at Google data, and then when we left, we brought in TikTok data. TikTok was taking off during the pandemic. It just, all the trends were coming from there. Everything that we were seeing that was trending on Google was coming from TikTok. So we realized we needed to embrace TikTok data as well. We added in TikTok data, and then we also have Instagram data, and also we just launched Reddit data. And so all these different signals come together to tell the bigger story. And I think even what you were touching on, this idea of understanding if a trend is here to stay or not, it also has to be cross-platform. And so we've launched a stat or a metric called the popularity index from Spate. And this measures how a trend is doing across all platforms combined. And so something like Google, for example, we have seen decline in search overall. And so if something's declining on Google, doesn't mean that it's not trending. It just means that like Google searches overall have declined. And so what we do is we normalize for platform behavior. And so similarly, everything on TikTok is trending because TikTok is just trendy. And so we normalize for the growth on TikTok, so that just because something's growing, it may not be trending, but we then normalize to identify what is actually trending on TikTok. And so we bring all those signals together to identify what's trending overall. And then we can see, okay, this is a trend. So to your earlier question of, okay, how do we know if something's here to stay? There's ways of looking at those context clues that I mentioned, but then there's also ways of looking at how is it performing across other platforms. And if it's seeing growth across all the different platforms, then you can also feel more confident that this trend is here to stay.
And can you share with the viewers, Yarden, a bit of how the signals from the platforms are different, right? There's different demographics, the different types of people on the platform. Obviously, some like you and your team are across all of them. But give us a feel of are there some the top, how you call them, the nails again?
The press-on nails, yeah.
Do you see this across all the platforms, or is that different? And give us other examples.
Okay, that's a great question. I do think different consumers engage with different platforms differently. But I do think there's also a bit of a misconception that certain demographics aren't on certain platforms. And so we get this a lot about older, in the beauty wellness industry, a lot of brands are trying to target women, and they're trying to target older women. And they think that TikTok's not right for that. But the brands who are going after these demographics on TikTok are the ones that are winning, because there are women and men across all ages on all of these different platforms, and figuring out how they're engaging and being the brand to stand out and to show up there is how you can win with this audience. Because, for example, an audience like Gen X women, they're a little they have been underserved on TikTok. TikTok, a lot of the brands come onto TikTok and they're trying to just target Gen Z, Gen Alpha, but there's a whole opportunity of older women that are looking to engage, and they don't want to just engage with teeny bopper trends. They want their own trends. They want their own audience. And so we've seen influencers and we've seen brands really take off. So brands like Laura Geller has seen a ton of success just positioning themselves alongside the mature skin trend on TikTok.
It's brilliant you say this because that's something I wanted to touch on, which is generations.
Mm-hmm.
And, the way we met is because of the Gen Z report. And then we also did one Gen X report with Nielsen, which is my generation. I think you are a young millennial, if I'm not mistaken, Yarden.
I
And
think,
so
and yeah, I'm like which side of the millennial sphere? But yes, I'm a millennial.
millennial. Millennial and Gen X have about the same amount of money, 15 trillion in our estimate. Gen Z has way less money, but gets a lot of emphasis in obviously in advertisement and in the space you're operating. And there have been various theories. Some say they just over index, it's just more fad, not a reality with the money. Others say that the kids influence their parents. Just give us your perspective on marketing and reactions and brand positioning across the generations.
Yeah, I think from the TikTok perspective, I do think that the older generations are seeing all the younger generations behave, and you know what they're engaging with on TikTok. So I mean, for myself even, but even as we were mentioning with Gen X, a lot of the trends that they're seeing are what the kids are doing on TikTok. And so they are engaging with it. And that's why there is such an interesting perspective to bring in stuff that's specific to them so that they don't have to just play with the kids in a sense, like they can find their own trends. And I think that's just where the opportunity really does lie. I, yeah, I think not everything works in that same perspective though, because you can try a trend that a younger person is trying and engage with it, especially in the beauty world. It might just not have the same impact. And so that's why there are all these influencers that show how things work for mature skin because, for example, like a certain blush, you can't apply it the same way that a 20-year-old will apply it, or the way 20-year-olds are talking about retinol and lasers and things like that. It's like they don't really need it. So they're not talking about it in the same way that an older audience might need to.
One thing I want to touch on, Yarden, is also some of the global footprint of your industry and how you spot global trends or trends elsewhere. Can you give us a few illustration of where some trends spark in some regions and not in others, or when then also something obviously may not happen in the US, but then comes, spills over elsewhere? Obviously, TikTok itself is an example where it originated from elsewhere. But yeah, give us a sense. Is there more similarity or more difference across the world, say within demographics, in terms of
Yeah.
what you can talk about?
Yeah, no, that's such a great question. We're seeing, I mean, it's no surprise, but Korean beauty has obviously had such a big impact. Trends like PDRN are trends that we spotted in the Korean data set first, and now we're seeing in the US. And, it comes out as PDRN serums, PDRN face masks. All the trends now are PDRN related. And so, yeah, if you look at Korean data, for example, you can really see what will take off in the US soon enough. I think what are trends that have taken off elsewhere and not, I think the world is a lot more global than we expect it to be. A lot of the trends and like even lip, I remember lip was taking off so strongly in the US during the pandemic. And then we started to see similar lip trends take off in the UK. I think the UK, I want to say, were more heavily into the plump lip than the US. Like I think it subsided in the US and the US went more for like lip liners, lip liner stains, and so on. But I need to confirm that. I need to double check the data. My memory's fading a bit with that.
The super cool, Yarden. Before we move to AI, obviously, what fascinates me still is the various trends that you spotted, including the press on nails. Just for the audience, what drove that press on nails pick off? Take off? What's your interpretation? Why that took off?
Yeah, that's a good question. So press-on nails were trending before um, the pandemic. So it wasn't because a lot of trends have taken off. A lot of ingredient trends, a lot of beauty trends started to pick up during the when people were at home. They were researching everything. They were um, trying to understand what would work on their skin. They were testing stuff on their skin, and then they'd have breakouts, and it just led into this crazy cycle. But when we talk about press on nails, that was before the pandemic. So actually, I have to say that it was likely related to just a typical cycle, and now we're hitting that cycle again. So we'll see. That's why I'm even more surprised that press on nails is continuing to trend, because we are getting to a point where consumers are starting to be interested in just plain nails again. And there are a lot of brands coming out and targeting just wearing your nails in a naked way, just buffing your nails, taking care of your nails, and so on, in hand care. And I think that's just a typical trend cycle that we follow. And you'll see that also start to happen with makeup. So we went through a very strong skincare phase, and consumers were very focused on face, not putting on too much makeup. 2016 is like the era that we think of when we think of like a lot of makeup. And now we're starting to see that a lot of makeup trends are coming back, and consumers are starting to be more interested in color on their face. And so I think it's just this transition, this typical trend cycle that we go through, and seeing how color kind of transfers from your face to your nails, and they go in this little cycle. And yeah, we'll see how it continues to evolve, because we are seeing consumers start to show interest in naked nails, but we maybe this time around colorful nails and press-on nails will continue to take off.
Super exciting, and maybe some viewers wonder now how come Wolfgang and Yarden are connected there, because Data Lab is not in that space, but there is obviously a connection, because you spot the trends, and everybody who wants to make business to see trends that others don't see should go to Spate. If you don't want to know how much money is in that space, with which demographics, that we can help with, and there's some joint recent work, and Yarden was recently in our panel on beauty futures as well.
Yeah.
But with that, Yarden, I think we can move to AI.
Well, I would just say quickly that as much as we're talking about press-on nails, I would say the big trends right now are definitely longevity and all the different lasers and treatments that consumers are exploring, and PDRN, as I mentioned, and exosomes. It's all about longevity. Press-on nails is a very small trend within this big sphere of beauty and wellness. And the trends, as I was mentioning before, there are trends coming and going every day, but looking at the data to see which ones are here to stay, things like exosomes and PDRN, and definitely, and scalp treatments, and so on. The list goes on.
And these are good bets to make in terms of trends here to stay, as you say. And one simple reason is because people just live longer, and wealthy people and healthy people live longer, and that's just a much longer economic lifespan as well for the brands out there listening. And we work with many clients in that space, exactly as you outlined, Yarden. Yarden, I think your Spate, if I understand correctly, is also a product, a child of the AI era, or you are leveraging it. You are strong because of AI. Tell us a bit how, obviously, a lot of happened since you launched, but maybe also share with the viewers why AI is your friend and not your enemy, or is it?
So I love AI. There are definitely pros and cons and things that we have to be very responsible with when it comes to AI. But I think in the worlds of data, we have always been an AI company. We leverage AI to analyze patterns for us. analyze billions of signals across all these different platforms and then help us identify what is trending up versus what is trending downwards. And we've always looked at pattern analysis to help us figure that out. And so AI has been a very, very good friend of ours in that aspect. And I think now with the rise of generative AI, there's a lot that can be benefited from in the world of data, in the world of market research, where we're trying to move quickly and bring stories together and understand where the consumer is heading.
And because you mentioned before your funding round and your growth, and so imagine there's now a more challenging investor and would say, Yarden, no, this is super cool what you did, but actually a lot of this will be automated by AI. And so even further, what would be your response that even in 5 years from now, AI is your friend?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think in 5 years from now, it's really hard to say what the world will look like. I think things are accelerating so quickly that we like anything that it's not doing right now, it might be able to do in just a few months, you know? But what I think is really helpful and where it really benefits is the implementation of setting up processes and making teams more efficient, making things easier to find. And I think analyzing data in a way that makes your team stronger. And so one thing that has been really interesting too with generative AI is this concept of UX, right? Everyone's using chat bots for everything, and you're able to speak to your data in a way that we haven't in the past. I think that's really fascinating because it just means that you can, we all have different types of learning skills, you know, or learning perspectives. We like to read somebody might like to read data, somebody might like to hear it, somebody might like to interact in a different way with it. And you might want to have a conversation with your data. You might want to see graphs. I think that's where AI can really benefit by also helping people engage with data on different levels in different ways that speak to them. I think communication with AI has been really, really interesting because communication seems to be the hardest part of anything in life, whether it's communicating in relationships, but also communicating even data. And my career at Google was really in the art of storytelling. And I think that continues on with Spate. It's not about necessarily specific data points. It's more about what story is that data telling, and leveraging AI to help us tell better stories that resonate with people in different ways, and making that more personalized and more engaging and more interactive, I think is a huge strength.
This is super cool. You said it very nicely. Communicating is the biggest skill to have, and either with data or in with your partner, right? That was my summary of what you said. That's a very nice way to frame it, Yarden. Just on this one though, just if again, it was interesting. You said you can't really, even 5 years is so far out. But if you think of yourself, your co-founder, others in your team, where will humans still be needed in the next few years in your space?
That's a great question. I personally, because I know everyone has different perspectives on where's the future heading. I love using AI at this time. I think a lot of people don't really understand the true benefits yet. I think that's fine. I think that it can be really hard to use sometimes. So it's very hard to get it to do the thing you want it to do. And I think people see it as like this magic tool where it's like, oh, I ask a question and I'm supposed to get exactly the answer. And if they don't get the answer, then they're like disappointed, or they just think they like brush it off and say, oh, it's not good. I think that's exactly where the human element comes in. I think we will always be needed to direct it, to manage it, to oversight, bring in human oversight, to explore, to review what the data is saying or what the AI is saying about the data. I think we can use AI as a starting point, as a brainstorm partner, as a way to visualize things. But even if you are asking it to visualize something for you, you still need to double check it and make sure that it did everything correctly. And so I think there's definitely a need for that human element. I don't think the human goes away, because then we just have bots talking to bots, and I don't even know what that means. Like, what world? That's a little terrifying, where it's just like a lot of trust is put into the machine, and machines break down just as humans do. And that's why you don't typically have one human doing everything. You have people, you have systems in place to help each other, support each other, to make sure we're going in the right direction, and things don't break down.
I think you very nicely and implicitly showcased also what the productivity gains will be if a human can multiply itself. And it's for a different topic, but also for the audience to be clear, my prediction actually is there's more jobs, not less jobs. It's a bit counter to what others think, but I think you already touched on some of those. And some of these jobs also, we don't know how they will look like, but nobody would have thought there is a place like Spate or like influencers even 10, 20 years ago. So there'll be new people that will be creative.
Exactly. And I think the world continues to evolve. I think there's been a lot of discussion around SaaS, and yes, I do think the SaaS market will continue to evolve, but I also think that new markets will become more prominent, like robotics and so on. And there's always data, and there's always the consumer, and there's always understanding consumer behavior and how it's shifting, and understanding what the implications are for brands. And yes, I think there's always a level of automation that we should be excited to explore and innovate with. But innovation always comes with struggle and iterating and learning and communicating. So.
Yeah, then I think this is a very nice moment to switch to the end, and the end question that I'm asking all of my guests, which is, what's your favorite number or data point, and what's the story behind it?
So my favorite number is I have to just say 9, and I know that's it's my birthday month, so I'll leave it at that boring answer. I love 9 though, because it is a very beautiful number, I think, but maybe I'm just biased because I've always had that number as my favorite. But my favorite data point, I think my favorite data point would be, let's say, I think 67% of all data points are fake, is what I've heard. I don't know. I don't know if that's actually accurate. That's a fake stat. I don't know. But I think the real point there is that in terms of data points, you can throw numbers at people all you want. Any data point can mean anything. We've all seen the data. I'm sure you've gone in the weeds of data, and you realize that data can always be, manipulated, changed. One data point can mean one thing, but one data point can be an outlier. And I just think that a data point on its own is meaningless, but that's why it's important to bring multiple data points together to tell a real story and understand where things really are heading.
Well, this is a brilliant way to end, Yarden, and just to build on this, I'm strongly believe in that as well, that actually too often it's not the theory that's the problem, but the underlying numbers. And when the numbers are then clear and adjusted, then actually some of theories fall apart, but not because of inherent illogic in the theory, but just the numbers were wrong. And just that emphasis on good data, as Spate is doing, is exactly where we should head towards.
Yeah, and it ties in also to that AI story, because I think a lot of the times we will see a lot of hallucinating when it comes to AI integration and data, and we'll see where that heads. But I think in general, a stat is a stat. It's more the story that is happening, the story, like what is the bigger picture, and making sure that you are tying in multiple data points so that if one data point's off, you're at least getting the bigger picture correct, and you're onto something real, not based on one data signal that is hallucinated.
It's a wonderful way to end this conversation. Yarden Horwitz, co-founder of Spate and a great entrepreneur. And I think you won a number of awards that people can check out. But thank you so much for being with us here, being with me on Data Talks.
Thank you so much for having me. Chat soon.